Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Can I ask all mobile phones to switch to silent, please, or switched off? It is with great sadness that I have to announce the death of Natalie Lagan. Natalie was employed as a youth support worker and was 41 years old and had been employed for 18 years. Our thoughts are with Natalie's family and friends. Would members please join me in a minute's silence as a mark of respect, please? Thank you. Please be seated. Right, move on to apologies for absence. I've got Councillor Grogan, Jeffrey, Leroy, Neil, Jones and Oliver. Do we have any more, please? Any more? Thank you. We've got the green form going around if anyone's got any interests to sign, please. Move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Are the minutes okay? Thank you. We have a seconder, please. Yeah, thank you. Just to note, the attendance matrix from the last meeting is there for you to see. And to move on to announcements from myself, the Mayor. Thank you to the councillors who have made a nomination for the Mayor's Community Achievement Awards. The awards will be taking place on Tuesday, the 11th of March. Tickets are also available for the Mayor's Charity Ball on the 12th of April at Gisborough Hall. Could you please let us know as soon as possible if you require a ticket? If you are unable to attend, a prize would be much appreciated. Do we have any announcement from the leader?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we last met, our borough marked National Holocaust Memorial Day at a ceremony hosted by our Mayor. Huge respect was paid to those that lost their lives and those who survived. The day honoured the courage of those who face unimaginable horrors and was a reminder about learning from the past to stand against prejudice and injustice in the present and in the future. Last week saw another success in closing a flat which was the centre of a serious antisocial behaviour and criminality. Our ASB team found the flat was being used for drug dealing and weapons associated with the property, including a knife, baseball bat and a 3-foot high plank of wood. There was also a report of assault, a man being scammed out of £4,000 and a claim that people were being told to pay protection money. The flat was also being used by a vulnerable homeless woman for prostitution. With the reports, the occupier was paid by them in crack cocaine. Wow. No one should have to live with this in their neighbourhood, and we'd like to pay tribute to all our staff who work with police and the property landlord to secure the closure. Breastfeeding mums are being asked to take their chance to start in a campaign encouraging other new mums to feed their babies naturally. A competition called Rising Mums has been launched to find 12 breastfeeding mothers in both Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland to become breastfeeding ambassadors in our communities. The winners will receive a makeover and photo shoot. If you know of anyone that may want to take part, the competition runs until this Sunday. Gisborough Library has just celebrated 25 years since the opening of its current building following a fire which destroyed the original one in 1996. The previous library was established in 1965 and both the former and current buildings have played a vital role in bringing the community together. The work the library is doing has been recognised by not being nominated for a national award. Both Gisborne Library and Redcar and Cleveland Library Service as a whole has been shortlisted in this year's British Book Awards. And then in a separate nomination, the extensive work carried out at Duncan Place and Loftus has been shortlisted for a regional award which recognises excellence in architecture. We are proud that all our services we provide and the people who deliver them every day. But it is fantastic to see the effort being recognised externally. Well done to all those involved, and we look forward to the 2 award finals. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements from Cabinet members, please? No? Right, move on then. Do we have any announcement from the Managing Director?
Just a quick announcement that when we get to the debate on the budget proposals, there is a named vote, and I'll explain when we get there the answers I'd like from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then, we've got no questions from the public, so we'll move on to the budget proposals. Councillor Massey, to move the report, please.
Thank you. Just waiting for the light to come on. So here we are again, everybody, the budget, and it's probably one of the biggest decisions that we as councillors make. I'll be moving the budget, Councillor Brown will be seconding the budget, just for the record. And there are 3 things that I want to touch on today throughout the budget. And those 3 things are that clearly, number 1, we're going to have difficult decisions to make this year and possibly next year. But 2, I think that this is a budget for growth, and it's a budget that can lead us into a much more optimistic future, which is point 3. That if we make these difficult decisions today, we can be on a steady, stable footing to enable us to take advantage of the opportunities that this borough is going to get through things like Tees Works over the medium term. So this report sets out the budget for 25-26 with a medium-term financial strategy up to 29-30. The recommendations in a broad sense are to approve the revenue budget itself and this MTFS. But also, crucially, it highlights £30.8 million of additional investment that's going to go into our services, particularly keyed towards helping the most vulnerable, adults in care, children in care. It also mentions a savings programme, which you can see at Appendix 3. These are some of the difficult decisions that we have to make. It talks about our reserve position at Appendix 4, the council tax levels, which are mentioned at Appendix 6, and I do want to note at this point that members will have received an update to the budget, which is an amendment. The amendment to the budget is sections 4.77 to 4.100, and the only things that the amendments show are the levels of precept that some of our parish councils have since set since the publication of these papers. So in essence, Gisborne and Lockwood Parish Council met after the papers were printed. The only change to the budget in the amendment is that those amounts for Gisborne and Lockwood are now included in the amended pack which you were sent earlier. The budget also talks about our business rate position, collection fund position, council tax amounts, and we'll also ask members to approve the capital programme, treasury management strategy, minimum revenue provision, and the policy for flexible use of capital receipts. But I'll touch on some of those as I go through. The first thing I want to say is a huge thank you to the members from across all parties who involved themselves in the consultation process that this budget underwent. We've seen widespread consultation, including 3 all-member conferences, including the Budget Task and Finish panel, chaired by Councillor Thompson and vice-chaired as well. We've also got, by Councillor Kerr, sorry, I forgot that part. We've also got a variety of other consultation exercises that this budget has gone through, one of which clearly is the scrutiny committee. So this has been a resource of scrutiny both in December and again after the consultation with the public closed. It went back earlier this month. On that public consultation, we received 285 responses. 71% of the public were in favour of our revenue proposals. 80% of those who responded were also in favour of our capital proposals. But we know that this budget is a difficult budget, and we also know that we operate not uniquely as Redcar and Cleveland in a challenging national environment. So the report will tell us that 30% has been lost from local government budgets since 2010. The LGA also says that £6.2 billion is existing in terms of a funding gap for local councils across the country. And we know that recently we've seen high inflation levels, huge demands for social care, which has seen 18 councils across the country ask the government, this government and previous governments, for exceptional financial support. The difficult decisions that we need to take today will stop us ever, hopefully, having to ask for such support in terms of our budgets. There have been some positive noises from the new government about changing the local government funding formula, which is something that has disadvantaged councils like Redcar and Cleveland for a number of years. We hope that this will come through next year, but at the moment, as I said, difficult decisions still need to be made this year, because at the moment that is something that is in the future and not necessarily in our present. We also know today that the council tax base rate has gone up by 583 Band D equivalents. There's a surplus in our collection fund, but one of the only ways this council can raise income is by raising the council tax. And so unfortunately, that is a decision that this council, I feel, has to make in terms of balancing the books and putting forward this budget. So the budget suggests a 2.99% council tax increase and a 2% adult social care levy to protect the most vulnerable in our adult social care sectors. Although I'm aware that 4.99% in total is a high number, it's not out of keeping with the national picture. 93% of all councils are putting council tax up by the maximum. I'm sure members will have seen in the news semi-recently that there are a number of councils that are going up to 7, 8, 9% council tax rises. We want to completely avoid that position. By making tough decisions, we can avoid that position. So these are councils of all shapes, sizes, and all political persuasions, but all above 4.99% are places like Windsor and Maidenhead, which is going up near 9%, Birmingham, which is going up 7.5%, Bradford, which is going up over 7.5%, Newham, which is going up over 7.5%, Somerset and Trafford, which are also going up by 7.5%. We do not want to be one of those councils on that list, hence why we have to make the difficult decisions today. One thing to try and assuage members, try and make members feel maybe as comfortable as possible with what is a very difficult choice, as I've said. Our council tax rate at Redcar and Cleveland is the second lowest in the Tees Valley, behind only Darlington. It is the third lowest in the North East, behind only Darlington and Sunderland. A Band D average, if we look south in North Yorkshire, is £1,861. Our Band D average is £200 less than that. That's not to say it won't be a hard choice that we have to make, and it won't be a difficult thing for residents, but our council tax, as I've often heard in the public, our council tax is not one of the highest in the countries. It's not even one of the highest in the region. The report also talks about opportunity, so it moves on to more of the second point. The opportunity exists in our business rate position. We can't grow business rates overnight, which is why we have to make difficult choices with the council tax. But with the business rate position that this council hopefully will have over the next 3 to 5 to 10 to 25 years with Tees Works, we should see in the next 3 years £27 million extra coming into this authority. That won't balance the books today, but it will really make, hopefully in the future, our lives much easier, and we'll be able to start doing things instead of stop doing things. The other optimistic part, I think, of the budget is the growth that we set out to achieve through service investments. You'll note that £73 million is in the budget to invest in our services over the next 5 years. Most of this is demand-led, extra money for adult social services, extra money for children's social care, but we're trying to seek to invest to protect the most vulnerable and also to ensure that this council fulfills its statutory duties. Alongside those optimistic points, there's also a savings programme in the budget with £8.8 million of savings identified over the next financial year. What we should see through those savings, though, hopefully, is a streamlined approach and a more proactive approach to managing services that have traditionally or historically overspent. So you'll note, as part of the £8.8 million of savings, £3 million, nearly £2.9 million, is a saving we hope to achieve by more in-borough children care placements, which I think is obviously, hopefully, the best outcome for both the child and the borough. Moving on to some other items, the reserve level of the council. You will note in the budget the reserve level of the council is low. We hope over the medium term to increase that. And thankfully, due to a slight amount of extra government grant that we received, our reserves are not going as low as we thought they would. But by the end of the next year, it's likely that our reserves will be about 1%. We hope to hit 6% as part of our Strive, Survive and Thrive strategy within 3 years, and hope eventually to hit our 10% target of reserves that we keep. So we hope that our medium-term financial strategy reserve will be still there, which we didn't originally think when this budget first went out, so that we can mitigate any impacts that we get in year. Budgets are not always set in stone. We have to make key decisions today, but budgets move, things change, so we need a reserve such as our medium-term financial strategy reserve. And then lastly, just to finish on a topic that I think is much more optimistic, hopefully, for members, is the capital programme. You'll notice the capital investment programme is in the budget as well. We've extended this a year to keep the 5-year horizon that we always have, and you'll notice that £219 million of funding is scheduled to be spent on capital projects in this borough over the next 5 to 6 years, up until the end of the decade in simple terms. The majority of that funding comes from grants, I would say about 2/3 of the funding, with an additional part coming from both borrowing and capital receipts. And it's on that growth that I want to end my introduction to the budget. There are difficult decisions, as I've said 3 or 4 times, that are in front of us today. There are also hopefully exciting opportunities, which I do hope that members can see. There's £30 million of service investments going into the budget this year, with £73 million over the next 5 years. There's the £219 million of capital investment that's going into the borough over the next 5 years, and hopefully the £27.5 million of business rates that we will see. The problem is that we have to make the decisions today to balance the books on the available data and the available money that this council will receive over the next financial year. It is nice to know and to think and to hope that these business rates are coming in the future, but it doesn't change the difficult choices we have to make today. So I move the budget and invite member questions, and I will respond at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Thank you. Right, it's open for debate. Councillor Kerr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Massey, and to all the staff. We appreciate all the really hard work that has gone into presenting the budget today. On behalf of our residents, the Conservatives will not be supporting yet another maximum rise in council tax, which appears to be the default position, unfortunately, of this administration. And I know it's very different being in opposition. However, we are not in the business of simply sniping from the sidelines. So here are the reasons why we shall be voted against the budget today. The overspend in children's services continues at levels that are too fantastic for ordinary people to even contemplate. Councils, including our own, have been sleepwalking into a situation where the market for residential care has been allowed to develop into some kind of cartel. We do not believe this was inevitable. The purchasing power of North East councils is significant. The focus on children's services should be relentless, and this is not what I believe we have seen. We have missed opportunities to have the debate in this chamber. The best debates were in the Budget Task and Finish group, the non-executive group led by Councillor Thompson. A review of home to school transport is underway, and I am not sure this would be the case if it were not for the work of the same Task and Finish group. The forecast saving in last year's budget was £132,000. Over the next 2 years, it's 1.5 million. A huge difference, though why the delay. A 1% rise in council tax generates around £800,000. Could a review undertaken on a more urgent timescale have reduced the increase in council tax by 1%? We raised procurement at last year's budget meeting, examples of us paying over the odds which were highlighted by Councillor Martin. And instead of a serious response that you might expect from a serious council around safeguarding local taxpayers' money, we heard silly references to a children's cartoon. And in the meantime, over the past year, we have seen no changes to our procurement rules. The taxpayers of Redcar and Cleveland are expected to pick up the tab. Contract management. Bakehouse Square in Gisborough, £420,000 paid out by this council that works that mainly had to be redone, and they are still not finished. A more terrible example of how this administration manages, or rather mismanages, its funding would be impossible to find. Assets are another service area we considered in the Budget Task and Finish group. We learned that we are failing to maximise revenue from our assets, and that we are subsidising some buildings, and we are not always sure of the reasons why. We earned £285,000 net from an asset portfolio valued at nearly £12 million, a return on investment of only 2.4%, and in the meantime, 17% of our revenue budget goes towards paying down our debt at an average rate of over 4%, So we make 2.4 and we pay out 4%. And that figure is only due to increase under this budget. We welcome a more nuanced, intelligence-led approach to car parking. The inflation-busting increases that were introduced by this administration were undoubtedly harmful to local business, and we welcome the partial U-turn. Many councils managed to make a surplus on car parking, whilst we are running at a deficit of £150,000. We are told 1/3 of the cost of enforcement is covered by the income generated, only 1/3. Sickness absence. In April last year, I asked a question about how we were managing sickness. Around 17,000 days lost to sickness, which in my conservative small c estimate amounted to a cost of almost 2 million, excluding on-costs. I was told our sickness rates were about average for the North East councils, as if that made it okay. 2 million lost in what you would term opportunity costs. £2 million worth of services not delivered. My final point, Mr. Mayor. The cost of antisocial behaviour is hard to define. This council has failed to take full advantage of government support to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. It failed to maximise the funding available through the previous PCC aimed at targeting hotspots, and money that was earmarked for Redcar and Cleveland went elsewhere. There is a £5 million allocation for crime prevention in TS6, yet delays have pushed this back to 2027. Opportunity costs that are difficult to define, but are undoubtedly significant and are undoubtedly adding to the council spend. Thank you. In conclusion, we'll work with you all day long to improve services for local people, and we have proved this by all the effort that went into the Task and Finish group. Today, we would not be doing our job in opposition if we did not hold your feet to the fire. We don't have an alternative budget, and I know we'll be criticised for it. That criticism, in my view, is unfair. The reality is there is very little capacity in the organisation to develop an alternative budget. When was it last done? Though we have highlighted many areas in which things might have been done differently, alternatives, if you like. And every word I have spoken today is on behalf of the residents of Redcar and Cleveland. So to be clear, we will not be voting for yet another maximum increase in council tax allowed without a referendum for the people of Redcar and Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do wish I'd stuck with my first original old-fashioned two-trench speech, but I decided to rip it up. Unfortunately, Carolyn Kerr is still stuck in them trenches, and she thinks that writing a leaflet in a speech is representing a residence more important than posting an alternative budget. I couldn't disagree more. We sat on that side of the chamber for 4 years and never once tried to block the budget, even though that the group in charge had spent the previous 4 years trying to block ours. £432,000 the council talked about, that doesn't come out the revenue budget and is not part of these proposals. Writing a leaflet, Carolyn Kerr, instead of protecting services for your residents for the next 2 years. I suppose I pretty much expected some of the stuff you said, but like Councillor Taylor, Councillor Thompson last year, they showed extreme principle because they voted against the party whip and the direction because they did the right thing. Councillor Kay, he spent 2 years waving a leaflet in Sue Jeffrey's face, and I called him populist at the time, I think, in the debate, and I was wrong, and I apologise to Councillor Kay for that, because last year he voted for a budget that protected youth services, the same as we're doing again this year, and he voted out of principle for Councillor Kay to vote with any Labour administration. I'd never seen it before, and I thank Councillor Kay, and I thank Councillor Taylor, and I thank Councillor Thompson. I make a few apologies as well when I've got it wrong. Councillor Hargreaves, I called you populist and played it in the gallery over the mask planning. I got that wrong. You were doing it because you thought it was the principal thing. I don't agree with the principle at the time, but I got it wrong. Tristan Leroy, he's not here recording me, unfortunately, but I apologise to him as well. when he posted the video last week or the week before about not voting for the budget, I was straight on there, called him populist. I did get the balance of likes on his own post. However, I was wrong, because when I've looked at his history, he's done it what he believed to be the principal right thing to do. As leader of this council, I inherited the largest overspend of any leader in the history, the worst financial position of any administration that this council has had in the history. Do I want to put council tax up? Did I want for the administration to introduce garden waste? No, I didn't. And we do that to the detriment of our own political futures. There'd be nothing easier for me than to dodge hard, difficult, unpopular decisions and just to be populist, but we've avoided that. There's a very good chance some of you guys are going to be sat on this side in 2 years, and I'll be proud that in knowing that I spent my 4 years making sure that this council was in a financial footing for growth and for future. Now, I took a study here 2 years ago and said about working together. Craig Alloway called me out on it. You haven't done enough. So we created a budget task and finish group that the councillor alluded to, unheard of for opposition to run a budget task and finish group where these proposals that were in front of us came from Councillor Thompson, came from you, Councillor Kerr, and we worked together. Councillor Thompson, the 2 conferences we had, he chaired them, he spoke to them. In fact, a few councillors said, oh, he's after your job. But we did that because I was dedicated to working together. But unfortunately, you guys are not. Obviously, Councillor Kerr, by your conversation, by your speech, sorry. I'm extremely disappointed, genuinely disappointed with your stance. I genuinely am. So, of course, I will be supporting this budget because Councillor Massey, working with officers, which you could have done over the months, nothing stopped you, worked hard to get a budget that balanced, get us through these next 2 years, and put this council in a position for growth. We're principled on this side, not populist.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, please.
This week, Alec. But I have got my principled reasons. And one of them is, do we offer value for money to our residents? Redcar and Cleveland Council are like any business. We offer services to the public and we receive money for which to do it. A good business may not run for profit, but certainly shouldn't run at a loss. If we are to remain in business, so to speak, we have to change our way of thinking and create income instead of just spending it. Our procurement system is out of reach to local business and would offer best value for money to local businesses. And they would offer best value for money and a pride to the work. And this procurement system does need a total overhaul. As a team, we've proved last year on quite a few cases where thousands and thousands of pounds were needlessly spent. Increased parking charges didn't create wealth, it reduced footfall. It reduced income from the local high street, not just damaging the local economy, but the national one too. We could have created more income via advertising around car parks, but we didn't. Last year, along with my respected colleague Barry Hunt, we brought into question at the task and force groups which we attended, the unbalanced seesaw of our leases. We are still seeing the same unbalances, unfortunately, this year. We're paying out 5 times the average rental value on long-term property lets to house single people, and then we are giving away large amounts of land and buildings on discretionary pounds. We sold a building last year for £1 million that could have bought 6 houses, reducing massive rental rates and retaining our £1 million assets, but we didn't. This year, our residents will be fighting financial battles that we can't even see straight for. And whilst I appreciate this has not been an easy budget for you to make, I have to look at what is value for money for my residents. Whilst core services are still being stripped, we are pandering to a private sector of profiteers, and this cannot be right. So, with my heart sad, Alec, I cannot support a nearly 5% rise again on council tax this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaway, please.
Based on a majority vote, then we would all be voting against the budget today, because a majority of our members have decided to do that. And these members have given two main reasons for this decision. Firstly, most obviously, there is the increasingly difficult financial burden that we place on our residents, many of whom are particularly disadvantaged by the cost of living crisis. Obviously, they have a good point. The cost of many goods and services will have gone up yet again by April, and probably unemployment as well following the higher tax on jobs. Raising tax on working people is exactly what we're being asked to do today. Secondly, I have to relate that these members have very little to no faith in the way the council is run. They see senior officers as very remote and detached from the lives and needs of residents. They see, despite all the cuts, bad spending decisions and waste. They view those council services most directly experienced by their residents, such as clean and green, as woefully inadequate. Some of them see a lack of strategic planning, even in social services, and officers congratulating themselves on projects which benefit a very small number of people. They see mistakes which cost the council money needlessly. However, a small number of independents will be voting for the budget today, and the reasons they have given, consistently given, is that there is no alternative to this budget, that the council must have a budget, and that unless you come up with an alternative, this is the only one practicable. And they too make a good point. Although I do wonder if any alternative budget that could have been found valid by the finance officer would have had to be one that would have just painted us into a different corner. For myself, I am very disappointed by the lack of any kind of meaningful rescue effort by the new Labour government. They are not even re-evaluating the revenue support grant to give us a fairer share, given that we're a post-industrial area trying to get back of deprivation and also new opportunities, which we can only take advantage of if enough of us are employable in those new jobs. Councillor Massey asked, or said that he didn't want us to have to ask the government for extra support, but why should we need to ask the government for extra support? Don't they already know the predicament that we're in? Or does Keir Starmer need Lord Ali to buy him another pair of spectacles? The broken market in children in our care placements is surely our biggest financial risk. But the new Children's Act says that the government will consider rate caps as a last resort. A last resort. When there are equity fund managers who can buy their villas on the profits made from the suffering of British children. It's enough to make a Colombian drug baron blush. Never has a government with such an elephantine majority behaved so like a mouse. Do you hear that spinning sound? That's Clement Attlee in his grave. But look, I know we have to make a budget, and I don't want to add to the difficulties of the officers that I respect, but I feel I must record a protest about the predicament we have been left in. A 1.7% increase based on the arbitrary period of September 23 to September 24, when the consumer prices index went up 1.7%. But if you look at the last 12 months, it went up 3%, or 4% if you're a mortgage owner, you're a householder with a mortgage. The same treasury tricks from the new government as from the old. There is never money, it seems, to help councils, but always money for some vast, doomed national scheme. But maybe one day they'll realise that it's actually good local municipal services that people want. So I'm going to abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Hanaway. Councillor Pugh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll start by saying a sincere thank you to the officers, the Cabinet, and everyone else involved in putting this budget together. Councillor Massey, you always outline the administration's view well. You always speak very well, and well done, and thank you for that. And Councillor Brown, I sympathise with you, to be honest, because you have been left in a tricky situation. There's no doubt about that. But I can't help that the residents I come to this place to represent are being let down. And by voting for today's budget, I could have had an easy afternoon, a pat off the back, off Labour, I'm sure, but that's not what I'm here for. The budget includes, for the first time, parking charges at Flats Lane Country Park. Never before in my lifetime have parking charges been implemented here. Charges make up part of the budget. I can vote against the budget to protest those parking charges. Thank you. It is absolutely unprecedented that those parking charges are being implemented, because not just park users who park there, it's local volunteers who go up there every single day and do a job that the council should be doing. They're going to be implemented. Okay, well look, if that's the
So it's
Mr. Mayor,
the speech is Mr.
Okay.
Right. Alex,
Mr. Mayor,
Alex, please.
I'm more than happy.
Councillor Pugh, please.
If these charges do not get implemented, please
I'm not having no
allowed
points
to
of personal explanation. Everyone's had a chance to speak.
Everyone
Councillor Pugh, please.
Oh, well, everyone gets a chance to speak in this place. You've never caught me interrupting anyone. And look, if you revoke the parking charges, fantastic, brilliant. If they don't get implemented, brilliant. That's a win for Normanby, a win for all of us. So the point I was making was there's local volunteers who go up there every single day, do a job that council's doing, should be doing. And they go up there, they volunteer the time, they're going to be charged a fortune if those charges are implemented. There's a Facebook poll on this issue. Now, I don't give a lot of credibility to Facebook polls because we know how they can be manipulated and so on. But over 700 local people responded to the poll saying, how, Mr. Mayor, I know you're having a joke, I get it, but let me speak.
Right, everyone sit down for a minute, right? Everyone gets a chance to speak, and will you please be respectful for everyone, please? Because, it is a budget, it's tens, everyone's got opinions, but we need to allow everyone to speak, yeah? So if you want to speak, there's hundreds of people who want to speak here. There's not a problem, everyone will get heard. But please, if you just refrain and let people have the say, yeah? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that, thank you. Councillor Brown, more than happy to have this chat outside the council. I'm speaking at the moment. So I appreciate the council needs to do more to stop going bust, but when so many local people are against it, and actually, as Councillor Dave Taylor raised at the last full council meeting, the implementation costs of this scheme, probably outweigh the money we'll make. It's both morally wrong and financially wrong. It's a wrong decision on both those points. And one thing that's important to me since I was elected is standing up for everyone in Normanby, regardless of which way they vote. And I'm sure that's the case for all 59 of us in here. It doesn't matter which way someone votes, you stick up for them. So today, I'm standing up for the 697 people in Normanby who in 2023, they voted Labour. They voted for a council tax freeze. That's not what only the Labour Party nationally said, but the Redcar and Cleveland Labour Group Facebook page, you know what they said? They said it's not a national promise, it's a local Labour guarantee. You can trust us. They're the words they used. And it was on Labour Party leaflets. I understand it's difficult in an election campaign, making promises and so on, but at the end of the day, those are the promises that were made. And I don't doubt for one moment that Labour voters in Normanby voted for that freeze. Look, and as I said, I sympathise with the administration. They're in a difficult position. But if I vote for this budget today, I'm emboldening you to break even more promises, and that would be wrong. And what makes this promise even worse, this broken promise, is the context in which it's being broken. Councillor Hanaway has spoken about the national situation we find ourselves in. Of course, Rachel Reeves hiked public spending by £70 billion at the budget. To pay for that, it means working people will be paying more, small businesses will be paying more. This council will be paying more in employers, national insurance and so on. Okay, £70 billion to spend. So what's Labour spending it on? Well, if you believe what some people are saying, £18 billion this Labour government wants to give to Mauritius for the Chagos Islands, islands we already own. Local authorities on the priority list? No chance. The Chagos Islands come ahead of that. And look, I'm amazed, and credit to them, the £22 billion black hole hasn't been raised today, though it is mentioned in these budget papers, a £22 billion black hole. But everyone knows that doesn't live up to scrutiny. The Office for Budget Responsibility don't properly recognise that number, and watching Labour ministers try and defend that number on the TV, good God. So, look, hypothetically, say there is a £22 billion black hole. Say there is. That's pennies in comparison to what the Conservative government inherited in 2010. As they didn't inherit a £22 billion black hole, a £50 billion black hole, they inherited, taking inflation into account, a £242 billion budget deficit. That is huge. And for the last decade, councillors on all sides of the chamber, including ours, have cried out for more funding from government. It's no wonder the austerity measures that had to be implemented with a black hole that big. And if it wasn't for that government leaving the finances in the state that they did, the cabinet today wouldn't be having to make the tough decisions they are. So I'm sorry to say, and it will come as no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, after that I can't vote for today's budget. Again, I respect everyone involved in putting it together, thank them for their work, but I'm not prepared to embolden this administration to break another promise. It needs to be held to account, and that's what I'll do. It's not my fault if the promises Labour made were unrealistic. I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Take it up with the
Councillor
Labour
Pugh,
Party.
can you hurry up, please?
Of course I can. So, there we go. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Kay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll thank Alex to say that I voted with my conscience last year, and I'm going to vote with my conscience this year, but I'll be voting no, because I just think things have gone too far. I don't blame you, lads and lasses, to be honest. It's your government that's to blame, which is draining local people and people throughout this island of their savings, their salaries, their wages. They're just too costly for us to bear. And of course, because of this, we are not getting the support as a council that we should be getting. I'm a bit sick of hearing about this golden age. The managing director put out a letter about, it must be 5 or 6 months ago, telling us about, Tees works, and if we just, it's about like a war, isn't it? Just grit your teeth, just make your sacrifices now, and the future will be rosy. And Councillor Massey has repeated this. But I do not think that we can grit our teeth and hold on any longer. Somebody has to make a stand to alleviate this drain of local people's resources and basically ruining their lives. Keir Starmer's always on about working people. Working people. I get sick of hearing about it. It's working people who are going to have to pay this council tax. These are the people who are going to suffer. And Labour is doing virtually nothing on a national scale to help working people. Just look at the burdens that people have to put up with. Of course, you'll be sick of hearing this, the withdrawal of the winter fuel allowance. People are still suffering to this day because of this. The imminent rise in oil and gas prices, again, we'll all be hit by this imposition. As my colleague mentioned a few minutes ago, billions are being thrown away on a lease for islands we already own. It's just ludicrous. What on earth is going on? If he said, I'm going to keep Chagos, he might go up a couple of points in the opinion polls. I just hope when he sees Trump today that he gets put right. Right. The only increase in expenditure by Labour that I would support would be the increase in defence spending. But it's rumoured, of course, that this is going to be used to pay for Chagos, which we own. It's ludicrous.
Well, Councillor
oh,
K, sorry,
so-
can you focus on the council tax that we're on
Well,
here?
I'm trying
We've
to-
got no say on national spending. It's just purely
Well,
on
but
council
the-
tax.
Mr. Mayor, the two things are interrelated. If the government was generous, we'd be glad to pay our council tax. But they're draining us to the bone, and we just can't afford to pay it. People, you know, there's not enough money for food. We've got inflation's increasing. I represent farmers in my constituency, and they've been hammered with increased inheritance tax. The country is in a right mess, as people, I would say.
Right. Can you sit down, please? And sit down, please. There's not a point of order at all. It's not a point of order. It's not. It's not. Sit down, right? I'll run this meeting, not you, right? So don't tell me what to do, right? And I will do it properly, and I'll start with you if you have to, and you're the one who will leave, right? So I'm in charge of this meeting, no one else. That's not a point of order. I've said it again, right? This is a final warning for everyone then. So anyone else will start moving people out then. If that's what you want. At the end of the day, like I've said before, the budget's important for everybody, and we're here to represent our communities, and there's difficult choices to be made. So let Councillor Kay finish, and then we'll move on. And if you want to speak, push your button and speak. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, and I'm coming back to a local level now. In real terms, government support has declined over the years, which means to support our children and our adults, these two demands on our, massive demands on our resources, we haven't got the government money anymore to support these services, and so that the people out there in the community have to pay for it. So it's an intolerable burden on our people in these terrible times. I've never felt so depressed in my life about the way this country is going. We can't afford to pay any more, and I vote everybody, even the Labour Party, if you've got any sense at all, vote against.
Thank you. Councillor Quartermain, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's sad to know, actually, that the Conservatives have already rejected the budget before this discussion even began, with a declaration that it's not our fault we are where we are. Bizarre. And I have to say, following Councillor Kay, I find it disappointing, but unsurprising he won't be supporting this budget, considering he represents the council at the Cleveland Fire Brigade. And you regularly send us incidents of interest emails, which I open all of them, and you know fully well how much the brigade struggles. The Q3 audit that you sent last Friday, the audit report of the Cleveland Fire Brigade, it reads horribly, with this region being the second worst in the country for all related incidents, and the worst in a number of categories. So you know fully well the pressures the fire brigade are under, and I think between 2013 and 14, the contribution from council tax was something like 32%. That's steadily risen to something like 45% today. So we have to continually contribute that as government funding declined, as we know, over the years. And that forced the brigade to make very difficult decisions where, you know, they've lost a third of their staff nationwide, right across this country. So, you know, I wonder which it is, Councillor. Do we not provide the service, the funding that it needs, or do we take it away from other services? But it's a stark reminder of why the decisions we make here are so important. It's not something we want to do, but it's very necessary. When times are good, we do A. When times are steady, we do B. But when times are hard, we must do C. And whether it's emergency services, highways and transport, infrastructure, adults and children's, proper funding is critical to keeping our communities safe, connected and resilient. You'll be pleased to know I'm going to keep my comments to what's going on here in Redcar and Cleveland. And you know, we recognise what's going on around the country, but we belong in this chamber here, and we have to cut our cloth accordingly. So the budget we set here today is absolutely vital in ensuring that we can continue to deliver the frontline services that residents, businesses and visitors rely on every single day. These are not just figures on a spreadsheet, they represent the backbone of our communities, ensuring safety, accessibility and the smooth running of our borough. And speaking as the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport on this budget plays a vital role in maintaining and improving our highways network all year. Whether it's responding to emergency flooding, keeping our roads safe during winter, or investing in street lighting, this funding directly affects the lives of people. And it's not just about the day-to-day operations, we are also making long-term investments in our highways infrastructure. With over 350 highway structures across the borough, we have a responsibility to ensure they are safe, well-maintained and fit for purpose. The cost of living, the prices of everything go up, and we have to consider all that when we're setting a budget. As a coastal authority, we also carry the responsibility of protecting our sea wall defences, slipways and Saltburn Pier even, all of which are crucial to our economy and community. The challenges of climate change and coastal erosion are real and ongoing, and we must be prepared to respond. Alongside this, we continue to invest in our vehicles that deliver essential day-to-day services, from waste collection to ground maintenance and home-to-school transport. This budget is about ensuring that these critical services remain in place, that we continue to make improvements, and that we prepare for the future. And I urge colleagues to support this budget to protect and enhance the services that matter to the people we represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak and explain my decision to the way I am voting today. Thank you, Councillor Massey, for your report. I'm sure all of us agree that none of us within this chamber wish to increase the challenging financial pressures our residents are under these days. But it is our duty as elected councillors to set a budget. In setting that budget, members jointly, collectively and individually have a fiduciary duty to council taxpayers, a duty to facilitate rather than obstruct the setting of a lawful budget. As we know, failure to set a lawful budget in time can lead to a loss of revenue, significant additional administration costs and reputational damage. It may leave this council at risk of a legal challenge from council taxpayers and intervention from the Secretary of State. We have a duty here to protect and provide vital council services to those who require and expect them, and those who are vulnerable in our communities. In my opinion, it is always easier to say no to a budget without coming up with an alternative solution than saying yes. Yes, I could have quite easily sat back and voted no or abstained, but this afternoon I will be fulfilling my duty and responsibilities as an elected member and voting yes for this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
You've heard every argument that I could put forward. You know, thank you, Councillor Massey. I have the greatest respect for you as a councillor and as a person. And to be truthful, the cabinet members and Alec, every time I've been, you've tried to help whatever I've done, and that's to all of the cabinet members. So I have no argument with everything like that. I'm not going to go on because it's all been said and a lot more will be said. But I stood up here last year and said that I couldn't look people in the face. The idea of putting the budget up, raising the council tax, is to be able to give the facilities that we have to do it properly, cut the grass, empty the bins. That's not going to happen. Plus, this year, the added fact of people, like they've said, the winter allowance, just people just cannot pay for it, and they've had enough. And the pensioners are a lot that are getting a kick in the teeth. You know, it's a matter of principle, and I am very passionate about it. And I'm not just like Stuart's just said there. You know, you've got to do this. And I cannot bring myself, as much as I respect how hard it is, and I've stood on that side. And when we were in power, as a cabinet member, I was voting against, and I come right to the end where we was persuaded for the same thing. It just goes on and on and on. Go home, you'll watch the television at tea time, and you'll get the same bad news all the time. It's not getting any better. And you know, at the end of the day, I said it last year, I can't look people in the face and support this. So, once again, with regret, I will not be voting for this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooke, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We face difficult choices that none of us want to make. I think that's been made clear in the chamber. But it's all in the interest of ensuring this authority can fulfil its statutory obligations to deliver a balanced budget. And there's some real challenges in the coming year, no doubt about that. But I'm speaking today as lead member for neighbourhoods. This year marks a significant milestone. For the first time in a decade, we have successfully safeguarded our neighbourhoods budget with no cuts or cost-saving measures to any of the service areas within my portfolio. And we are investing back into areas which have previously been cut or reduced. This achievement underscores our commitment to these vital services and their importance to our communities and residents. As we confront ongoing challenges, we remain dedicated to enhancing efficiency, providing education, and improving overall quality and standards. A vote against this budget would be a vote against protecting our neighbourhood services. We all recognise the financial ramifications of failing to approve a balanced budget today. Such a failure would lead to significant repercussions for my portfolio and ultimately our residents, jeopardising the level of protection we can provide and potentially impacting many of our non-statutory obligations. I urge my fellow members to consider the implications of their decisions today. Let us prioritise practicality over politics or populism and work together for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Earl, please.
Yeah. Just want to say that I've listened to the debate, and I think it was, yes, it was Councillor Hanaway who said we have to make a budget, and it was Councillor Smith who told us that there would be repercussions if we did not make a budget. I think it was Councillor Hart who talked about value for money, and it was Councillor Kerr who talked about children's services. I'm going to vote in support of this budget because I want to protect children's services as much as possible. The costs have risen astronomically, I understand that. We're doing a huge amount of work in prevention to try and reduce the number of children in need and children in care. That is a long-term project, but I don't want to see this budget fall and we can't protect youth services. I really believe we have to support our children, have to support Councillor Brooke and his play parks and the neighbourhood initiatives that he's forming. So my actual question is to Councillor Massey. We've heard about there will be repercussions if we do not pass a budget, and I'd like him to outline what those financial and reputational repercussions might be if these elected councillors do not agree a budget, because as we've already heard, there is no alternative budget.
Thank you. Councillor Joy, please.
Mr. Mayor. Well, this is an awful predicament to be in for anybody, and I'm really grateful that we're allowed to speak on this. Thank you for delivering, obviously, what's a very well thought out budget. I think the strategy of survive, strive and thrive is really sensible, and we have to obviously cut our cloth according to what we've been dealt over the last few years, which is not much to do loads of stuff with, and really important stuff like Councillor Earls just outlined as well. And again, like Councillor Hart pointed to, it's about delivering value for money, but the council isn't a business, despite what some may say about it being a business and I'm going to run it like a business. Councils aren't businesses. They're a means to protect public services, to develop and support our, well, maybe they should be, but they're not. And also, while I'm on the subject, I think, you know, democracy's under fire. And I think we need to look internally. You know, there's a lot that we can do in here, and our job is to deal with the cloth we've been cut, which is not much. It's a bit piffling. It's like a G-string, isn't it? And we're trying to cover ourselves up with it. It's how we do it. It's how we do it. So this isn't actually in my speech at all. You'd be pleased to know. So I think nationally we need to look for better ways of funding. And you've talked about, you know, ways to get funding. We need funding quick. You know, I know there's talk about getting more equitable funding, but for deprived areas like ours, the system just isn't working. So I think we need to draw attention to that for Redcar and Cleveland, because we do get a raw deal. Having said that, I think I'm minded to support, it's a Hobson's choice of a budget, but I'm minded to support it because I think there's a sensible and rational plan thought out. We need to demonstrate, though, to residents that they're getting value for money as much as we're going to spend, which I know is being cut because it has to be, and to make sure that it's transparent, because I think residents feel sometimes like there's no transparency. There is. This is a public body. Everybody is allowed to look at the books. And I think we need to concentrate on communication. But I think we also need to be really creative and have a robust parallel plan in place. I wouldn't be a proper Lib Dem if I didn't check my own bias. So I ran this past ChatGPT and put the document in to say, could you critique it and offer some praise or some criticism? And it just talked about the tease work. So I think there's a reliance that we talked about things like hopeful. That's not a word I think we should be using with the tease works plan of 27 million. I, like everyone else, really hope it comes through, because we can milk it like it's, you know, that it's like, you know what. But I think we have to be careful. And ChatGPT says that if tease works fails to meet economic expectations, the assumed revenue boost may not materialise, leading to budget shortfalls. It's fraught with uncertainty, so we need to be all over a parallel plan, and we need to be sustainable, protect our cultural interests and balance the books, and for that reason I'm going to be supporting the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Nightingale, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard a lot of the problems, and I think we should recognise that we live in a real world. Our country faces real change. Real change from potentially malevolent outside forces. The whole of the public sector of the UK needs to respond with real change. Conserving what's good in society, protecting social welfare, and defending our liberal democracy, small l, small d. In the face of these real changes and the real world issues that this council faces, everyone on this council needs to do the right thing and provide the council with the required resources embedded in this motion. It is the responsible thing to do, and I was delighted to hear Councillor Smith talk about our duty as well as our responsibilities. It's disingenuous to claim you cannot face the local people after increasing council tax. It is, after all, part of the Conservative government's policy over the years to shift the burden of taxation to local council tax increases. Would you like to face local people if they faced double-digit council tax hikes? Would you like to face local people if they faced massive social care cuts, unfilled roads, and your pet projects dumped? That's the prospect if this motion fails. It's no good waffling about inefficiency. Efficiency savings have been rolled out and giving value for money over the last 10 years and more. Above all, no other alternative budget has actually been suggested by any single member of the opposition on this council. There is plenty the Labour government should be doing. Rather than impose nearly £1.7 million extra cost thanks to the council's employer's national insurance bill. And it's pretty damning, isn't it, when the extra government funds go straight into reserves. It tells you something about the need for preserving the sustainability of the council. If you want to ensure the council is financially stable for the future, everyone here needs to vote to provide the resources for the local services that local people need. In the face of real change, it's the only thing to do, it's the right thing to do, and it's the responsible thing to do. We'll be voting for this budget.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been reminded, and quite rightly so, that all authorities have a responsibility and a requirement to set a budget, and that is what will be done here today. However, it is incumbent upon us to have thought about how we conduct our business, and not simply to genuflect and to agree to additional funding where there remain many questions marking regarding how public money is actually spent. We are guided to seek best value, are we not, as elected members, for expenditure and to operate with efficiency. Regrettably, there are too many examples in this authority where that does not appertain. There have been many achievements, and these require applauding. Credit must be given to cabinet members who have stepped up and excelled in many areas under great difficulty. And there are many officers who have followed suit. Sadly, there are many, many instances of underperformance. And we may be criticised today for talking about detail instead of lauding principles and philosophical approaches. And I want to remind members that we are here today representing the public and not individual aspirations. We have a classic case, do we not, where the borough is continuing occupation of 3 significant buildings on this campus, when 2 would evidently suffice, and indeed we should not have invested hundreds of thousands of pounds in refurbishment on reorganisation at a time when we are suffering extremely scarce resources. So, Mr. Mayor, with trepidation, dare I talk about Saltburn Ward quickly. The Valley Gardens have been without a green flag since 2018. Withdrawn despite 3 consecutive years of guidance from the awarding body. The Valley Gardens lie on the at-risk register established by Historic England. The latest Historic Heritage Lottery Fund bid failed. Why? Because there was no management plan in place for the Saltburn Valley. It also failed because the Aspired to Visitor Centre, advocated by Place Investment and the Visitor Destination Team, had no business plan associated with it. £30,000 has been spent on consultancy without positive outcome. A business plan was requested for the Cliff Lift following a 200% overspend during a regretted closure procedure. No such plan has been produced, and a commercial alternative remained on our desk for months because the department was under-resourced and did not have time to read it. £20,000 has been spent on pathways not fit for purpose. The agreed principle of appointment of a foreshore manager has never materialised because of financial constraints. Despite the ward attaching attracting over 2 million visitors per year. The capital programme for redevelopment of the town has been reduced through varying expenditure on long overdue maintenance. And even then, the delivery has been delayed, incurring ever increased costs in the process and varying to elsewhere in the borough. The Saltburn Transport Master Plan costing £50,000 was withdrawn without consultation. One could continue to list, Mr. Mayor, but it is clear the authority has its priorities misplaced and could, if it was more efficient in its delivery of all services that particularly dominate this budget. This was clearly demonstrated with the valued work that the Budget Task and Finish Group conducted throughout the year, as referred to by the leader, and I give him absolute credit in initiating this particular piece of work. It is, and hopefully will continue to be, an essential part of the evaluation of how this authority conducts its financial affairs. This highlighted that cost recovery should be a particular requirement of operations, and only after efficiency of delivery is demonstrated. Saltburn Pier, which has been mentioned, would not have had any money spent upon it if it had not been from lobbying from local members. I cannot support a budget that is going to continue without clear improvement across departments, and where reserves have been depleted to a crisis level, and attention to detail is not always present. Equally, Mr. Mayor, I recognise that it is a statutory requirement of this authority to set a budget, and I cannot vote against that. The principle we face today is clear. Accordingly, Mr. Mayor, I must regrettably decline to vote and will be abstaining. Some may say that is irresponsible, but a decision has to be made, and sitting astride a set of Victorian railings is not a comfortable place to be, but will have to be borne until significant improvements in management
Councillor
control
Thompson, can you wind up, please?
and a refocusing of priorities is agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak totally uninterrupted. You know, the Labour group really make me laugh when they say they've inherited a deficit. Never inherited, they volunteered to take it on with the partners of the Lib Dems. So you take the challenge on, mate, you've got to accept the consequences of what you're taking on. The budget setting, it's like a matter of course, isn't it? It's the same every year. It's like a bit of deja vu. Nothing changes. We have no money. We have nothing. We have nothing but gripes and complaints and moans and groans. But I still struggle to get through, and I'll tell you why. Because I have a lot of respect for the members who are on the cabinet. I get a lot of support from these people, and they do a good job for me. The officers, some of the officers I go to are terrific. They really are. Next day, and the job's done. Don't have a problem with these people. The workforce is absolutely outstanding. I just wish, and it's been mentioned, so I'll only mention it once again, that the government would step up to the plate and accept its responsibility for the people that they represent as well. They leave us all in destitution, shortchanged, and they're doing such a rubbish job. He's over there now seeing Trump, and Trump will tell him what to do, and he'll come back like his little lapdog and say, yes, Mr. Trump will do exactly that, just like he did with the defence. I'm an ex-soldier, and there's more ex-soldiers and armed forces people in here, and I look forward to that. And it's a great thing. I don't like buzzwords. Well, let's look at the three that they've come out with. At the moment, I think we're in stage strive. All right, so we're striving on. And the next stage, we talk about survive. Well, we are. Are we surviving? Just about. And again, I blame central government for that. But I can't go with the third buzzword of thrive. So, Chris, I'm going to call you out. I'm going to ask you, you've said and I'm going to quote you, that we're going to have 27 million quid in a few years' time. And do you really think that the horrible little woman who's down in Downing Street, who's took away pensioners' money, is going to allow us, as she won't even know where Redcar and Cleveland is. I'm sure the half of them don't even know where it is. 27 million quid. What you're doing is you're feeding the residents with an untruth. It's a bit of a propaganda you're doing. You've got to stop it. Don't promise things that you know you're not sure you can deliver. 27 million quid, they'll be thinking, oh great, we won't have any council tax to pay shortly. So please, I want you to stop this survive business of 27 million quid. It's not on. I just hope we get through this turmoil in the next couple of years while I'm still here, and the rest of us are still here, and that, as it's been mentioned by quite a few councillors, we're to serve our community. Not our political beliefs, our own personal beliefs, but our community. You've got to do what's right for the community. I know how I'm going to vote, and you'll find out in a few minutes' time when the managing director shouts out my name. But thanks very much, and again, thanks to the officers, thanks to the cabinet members, and anybody else who's helped me in the past. And God bless our armed forces.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. There'll be a few more than a few minutes by looking at how many people want to speak, by the way. Councillor Suthers, please.
Hi, folks. Sorry if I'm squinting a bit here. I should have brought my sunglasses, shouldn't I? Redcar in February, who'll believe it? Maybe I've just got the sunniest seat in the room. Well, none of us come here to increase council tax, do we? None of us come to this chamber for that. None of us come and sit here to cut services. Unfortunately, that's been the position for local authorities like our own since 2010. Back then, the rate support grant covered over 50% of the revenue budget. Over the following decade, that was steadily eroded away. George Osborne's so-called austerity cuts hit local government far more than anything else. It targeted authorities like our own much more than those leafy parts of the southeast. You just need to look at any ONS publications on the impact of the cuts, and it's pretty stark. We've lost over half our staff since 2010, and as a result, we've sold off a myriad of assets to avoid a Section 114. Most recently in my ward, Belmont House sold in a fire sale, which is indicative of both those things. There are very few services left to cut. In children's services, the only discretionary spending is on school crossing patrols and 16 to 18 home to school send transport. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? And we're out on consultation to rationalise the transport. And there's, of course, youth services. Which of those do you want to cut if you're not going to support this budget? How can you vote against the budget without proposing an alternative or telling us what you're going to cut? I hope that Chris is going to be able to tell us the cost a vote against will impose on this authority. And now we might eventually post a balanced budget. It's required by law. You know, it's a criminal offence for us to not post a balanced budget. And if we don't, we could end up with a Section 114. We'll lose control of our finances and our services, and residents will face council tax hikes, maybe 15, 20%, maybe even more. We've seen it up and down the country. In children's, we now have 420 or so children in our care. The Osborne cuts devastated some of our communities, and that's an increase from about 100 a decade ago. It's a massive increase and impact on the finances of the authority. Mandatory spending. And we've now got a strategy to mitigate the causes of children coming into care. and support those communities in need in the long term. And to support the acute demand, and it's been mentioned earlier, for placements, the massive costs involved there, we're working to acquire our own children's homes in the borough. These strategies, if I can say it, and many similar initiatives will be under threat should these budget proposals be rejected. So don't vote against the budget in a misguided attempt to be popular. Nor is it time to enhance your credentials as an anarchist. Think about our residents, not populist politics, and please support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salvin, please.
Oh, at last. I'd just first and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for that minute's silence at the beginning of this council meeting, because Natalie was a friend of mine, and I know that her widow will truly appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, today I'll be rejecting this budget because it's the right thing to do. I've heard growth mentioned several times today. Now, I did study economics at university, and yes, and there he is over there, Councillor Southers. But you can't get growth by taxing people more money. And to this day, we've had 15% rise since I became a councillor 2 years ago. You know, it's madness. The Labour members opposite often talk about playing politics, but on the first budget, I did vote for the rise. At the time, inflation was at 11%, and the council needed to increase by 5%. I felt that with everything that was going on in the world and the fact that things were going up so much, I felt at the time it was the right thing to do 2 years ago, and I did vote for that budget. Since then, I think there's been excuse after excuse made in budgets to rise by 5%. But yeah, I mean, whilst I didn't take that decision lightly 2 years ago, I felt it was the right decision. The Labour Party then sent out a leaflet about me to basically say to everyone in TS6 that I voted for the budget. Now, why, if we're playing politics like that, would I vote for a budget again today, if that's what they're going to do by me supporting the budget? Mr. Mayor, it was good to see in the budget for the first time that actually business rates are forecast to come to this council from the Teeswork site. A site which, let's be honest, got slandered to death with the unfounded claims of the local MP who tried to destroy the project in its tracks. We all know who he is. Now look then, since the general election in the summer, the party opposite have all jumped on the bandwagon of its success. But credit's where credit's due. It's about time that you got on board, and I will applaud you for that. But only yesterday, I was at a TVCA meeting, which I attended on behalf of Councillor Grogan, who couldn't make it. And Labour, who constantly play games but say they don't play games, wanted the word unfounded allegations taken away from a statement that was factually correct. Game playing at its finest, as always, by Labour. But Mr. Mayor, coming back to local issues, and I know Councillor Pugh's mentioned it already, but there's a park run in Flats Lane at the Woodland Centre. It happens several times a year, and I didn't know this until I was speaking to members there, that actually people from as far away as Fife in Scotland have attended this park run. And the reason they do so is because it's quite unique. It's obviously got the winding woodland and the pathways, which makes it a more fun course than just running around a bog standard flat park. And according to the organiser, it's actually the 5th best run in the country, which I didn't know, but I think that's a fantastic statistic for bringing people into this area. Yeah, and like Councillor Pugh said, if these car parking charges happen at the Woodland Centre, we're going to lose all the voluntary help from these people that do our work as a council and tidy that place up on a daily basis. In the coming years, we're going to see more business rates coming from the Teeswork site. Millions of pounds worth of business rates, to be precise. No more 5% council tax increases on the cards, unless Labour at the helm. So for the sake of a few £1,000s in revenue, let's scrap these charges at Flats Lane. I cannot turn my back on residents in the TS6 area, It's the only real green and viable space that we have, and it'll only make matters worse for the future if people can't get to use this park. Where I will concede though, and a few people have mentioned this today, where I will concede ground, is that I do believe that the funding formula does need updating, in especially areas like ours that are disadvantaged. And on this point, I do have some sympathy with the party opposite in the administration. But for all the reasons I've stated, I cannot be backing this budget today, and I will be rejecting it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, please. Yeah, what is it?
The chamber today that parking charges keep getting brought up about today's budget. I just want clarification just to squash that confusion that parking charges form part of fees and charges that are agreed in December and not today's budget, and that the opposition members didn't attend that cabinet to put the residents' concerns ahead. Can we just have clarification on that, because I think it's good that members know what the actual process is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Cabinet has responsibility for setting fees and charges, which they did in December. So those fees and charges are part of the budget, which has already been agreed at Cabinet level. It's not a council decision.
Now, at the time, Councillor Brown seemed to indicate that that was wrong. So could I just get some clarification on that, please?
Right. Councillor Massey will pick that up as part of the summing up. All right. Thank you. Councillor Davies, please.
I don't care what anyone says, government policy decisions directly impact on what we can and cannot do at a local level. Councillor Suthers hit the nail on the head, well, his first part anyway. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Do we just keep accepting this year after year? Or do we stand together on all sides of this chamber and call on government to fund local services and councils properly, equally and empathetically? Councillor Pugh, you had an excellent speech. Councillor Kay, I agree entirely with you. Councillor Massey, I agree with all of your statements of fact. And Councillor Joy's analogy of a G-string, I thought it was more like Emperor's New Clothes, because we got nothing. The medium-term financial strategy, as it is called, it's more like the short-term financial strategy, because since I was elected, and the cabinet member and the leader will both understand, because they've been here just as long as I have, that every year we set a budget that no government has ever given this council a forward plan on its finances to allow us to be able to plan for the medium term. Now we are told that next year will be that year. It seems like a broken record from Whitehall every year, if you ask me. In summary, our council has lost 30% of its core spending power since 2010. With the shortfall landing on doormats to our residents in this borough in the form of council tax increases. The Cabinet member stated that this is a budget for growth and investment, but given what looks like a looming trade war internationally, the increase in national and local business rates, we will be lucky to retain what businesses we have left to grow and expand. The decisions taken by the new Labour government have and will only exacerbate businesses struggling and continue to struggle in the future. Given also that Angela Rayner has announced a rip-up of local government to help fund the Labour Party promises to fund adult and children's services in the future, our residents will be at a gross reduction in community representation electorally. Communities will suffer through neglect and they will be removed even further from decision making. People who live in Loftus in rural communities like mine who are at the periphery of any potential future council boundary. Devolution has always been the buzzword from both colours of Parliament, yet we can't say no to anything really, because in things like planning, because we have to stick to the guidelines set by government, unable to say no to applications to things like housing, with fear of the Secretary of State overturning a decision and then leaving the council open for the compensation that could run into the millions of pounds. That's not democracy. Take this budget meeting, for example. If this council fails to set a budget, as Councillor Smith pointed out, the ramifications potentially are huge. As councillors, we are forced into voting a set way, because if we don't make a decision, then basically we're potentially held on fines, or having someone else set a budget for us. I mean, it's never actually happened, but you know, it's just something to bear in mind. This is not devolution. This is not giving local areas the right to make sensible, informed decisions. It's rank and file, do as I say, not as I do. This is present-day democracy, ladies and gentlemen. I fear that our residents are in line to be severely shortchanged on a basis that this government can fund its shortfalls in basic council services that it should be directly funding. It's a postcode lottery in this country, and the financial imbalance is real, and it's only growing wider between Redcar and Cleveland and other councils around the country. If the government that get their way now, we will be next in line in terms of reorganisation of local government. Got to go back because I wrote it the wrong way around. LGA's core spending rise of 6% is projected, subject to a full council tax rise in council tax and the adult social care levy. I've got a question for Councillor Massey, which you might be able to find out for me because I can't find it anywhere in any part of the report. How much do the council expect to receive in next financial year between this April and next March for the share of accumulated surpluses of business rates levy, which is apparently 100 million total shared between all councils? And has that been accounted for in this current financial budget for the next financial year? Because grants received will only offset the Labour government's own calamity budget decisions, reflecting on national insurance rises, which in turn we will see a decline in our local businesses on high streets and industrial estates. Given everything that I've talked about today, there's probably more, and I still think there's more things for us to say and do, but the fact that we can't say no to a budget and everything else, the fact that I got lied to in the last year's budget on the fact that our community development officers would be retained and they haven't, on that basis I can't vote for it. I definitely can't vote against it because we can't vote against, because if we vote against it, it doesn't go through. Potentially we might be held a bit liable for that, so I'll be abstaining on the basis that I can't support it, but I can't vote against it at the same time. But we definitely need to do something about democracy, especially locally, and the one thing we can all do as councillors in this room is stand up for the people that we represent and stand with each other shoulder to shoulder to say we can't take it anymore and things have got to change.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Robson, please.
Yeah, none of us want to be in this position where we're raising council tax. I certainly didn't. This is my second year of cabinet lead and second year of being a councillor, and I'm just trying to do the right thing, which I think most people in this chamber are trying to do, so I'm certainly not about playing games. But if we don't have a balanced budget, I really worry about the people I'm represented in my portfolio within adults. Redcar and Cleveland have got a higher proportion of elderly, a higher deprivation. You know, there's a lot of challenges within our area. And I do think we've got to offer value for money. Adult services, we work really, really hard. We are on budget, and that's down to the hard-working staff and the officers, and I'll reflect a bit more on that later in my report. But it's difficult. We've had to make some tough choices. We've had to have some vacancies. Where there's been vacancies, we've had to have freezes on some of those things. We've had to have delays on certain things, initiatives that would make a massive impact because there just hasn't been the resources. And I'm really, really worried, but it's been our choices and we've had control of that. But I'm worried if we don't have a balanced budget, then those choices are going to be made by other people, and it'll be choices that are going to massively impact. At the moment, we can meet our statutory duties in adults, and we're still able to do some preventative work that's so important, because we've got to be much more upstream of things rather than reactive all the time. And that's really, really tough in the climate that we are in at the moment. But we're managing it just within adults. We want to do more, and hopefully in the future, when things are kind of better, we will do more. But we're managing to do a bit. But if this choices that are taken away from us, and we can't balance this budget, then we're going to. I worry that we're going to struggle to even just do our statutory duties. Never mind the other stuff that is really going to impact on people's quality of life and well-being. So I'll be voting for this budget, and I hope other people in the chamber do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, please.
Excuse me, afternoon everybody. I'm not going to talk about politics, because to be honest, I'm not bothered. No matter if we got £300 billion from the government, we probably still want more money. So what I'm going to talk about is what are we doing with the money we have actually got. We're not spending it wisely. It's as simple fact as that. We're still spending too much money to plug a Christmas tree light in. I talked last year about procurement, and we need to get more local businesses involved in procurement, and more local businesses working for the council, doing jobs. What's actually happened from last year to this year? Nothing. Because I'm still getting contractors contacting me saying, how do I work for the council? How can I put my name down for these jobs? Nothing's happened. Why is it, Mr. Brown? Why has this happened? All right. Right. And I asked a question in governance in springtime. I asked a simple question: how many units has the council got that are currently emptied? How much money are we not getting off business rate? How much money we're not getting off rent? And what are we doing to obviously get these units reopened, possibly renting it out to local businesses? Guess what? I'm still waiting for the answer. A month ago, I asked the council, how much money has the pothole in Eston Rec cost the council so far? And where's this money coming from? Guess what? I'm still waiting for the answer. Until you say we need to work together, but until people start answering questions so we can feed that back off to our residents, how can we move forward as a council? We need to work together. It's been backwards and forwards all day. I've got an headache. We need to work together. I cannot accept this budget just because you can't answer questions. We ask questions. You need to answer questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ovens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much of what I might have said has already been said by Councillor Nightingale and other people, but I do think we need to stand up for people, and I will be supporting the budget. But instead of saying, oh, we made mistakes in the past and we've got to really criticise ourselves and look to see how we hold the current cabinet members to account. And I think we can do that through our scrutiny role. And I worry, as Councillor Upson does, that within social services, we are there to offer protection and safeguarding to our residents out there. It's always an unknown number, but I think we have a duty to at least take that on board. I think we need to put pressure on the current government, and whether it's from the Fire Authority, and Councillor Kay managed to get the third quarter figures out before I got home to put them out. But it's been a dire position for the as Chair of Audit in Fire Authority, and we've been putting pressure on for years with successive governments from the time of Councillor Foster, And I think we need to press to do that, and that's what I want to be here to do, and to support this budget, but to work within it from scrutiny, to look. I hear what Councillor Thompson said. We've made mistakes, yes, and we never learn from them. I think we need to try and draw a line somewhere and move forward and really use the powers of scrutiny to hold the current government and council to account, and to press for the improvements in funding for fire, police, councils, and we get a true levelling up, because we ain't getting our share of what's around there. A lot of it is going south where they don't, quite frankly, need it. The biggest difficulty with the fire authority was that the funding formula was changed significant numbers years back, when they took out any cognizance of all the coma sites we have, which made a dramatic difference. We still sit with all those coma sites and all those potential difficulties, but we need to be standing up here, working with the people over there, and pressing the current government to look to the north and to give us a fair deal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Wayne called it a broken record. I think most of us have been here for a good few years, call it deja vu. We pretty much know what we're being expected to do. I'd like to go back to a point that Councillor Nightingale made, and Councillor Kerr mentioned that 1.6 million this council will be paying for directly employed staff in additional national insurance contributions. That equates to 2% council tax, so I'd be interested in Councillor Massey's view on that. So what we're actually doing is 2% is ring-fenced for adult social care, and 3.99% is coming back into this authority. But what it appears, if I've got my maths wrong, please let me know, is that 2% of that 2.99% is going back into a central government pot to pay for national insurance, which doesn't really help the local authority. Statutory duties, and I agree with a lot of what Councillor Southers said, but non-statutory is what's going to save us money in the future. Non-statutory is the icing on the cake. It's not just making sure your children arrive at school, it's making sure that they've got shoes on their feet and nice things. It's making sure that the youth services are kept up so that children have somewhere to go, so that they don't get involved in antisocial behaviour, which then goes on to lead to more expense in the future. So I definitely sort of like an answer on the national insurance, because it feels that not only are we raising money and taxing people that possibly can't afford it, but we're raising money with the new policy on national insurance to send it to central government. That's not helping the residents of Redcar and Cleveland. So I can't not support a budget for all the reasons that Councillor Southers said. I want, hopefully, the future and the business rates that come in the future to make the point that we don't have to increase it, but we can provide better services and we can support and protect our residents. So I will be supporting the budget, but there's things can and be done better locally, but definitely nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to the officers for putting this budget together and everybody who worked on it. I'm going to be short and sweet. I've listened to Councillor Massey, Councillor Brook, Councillor Quartermain, the ones that swung it for me. I came here today, Councillor Brown, to vote against this budget. Yeah. And I'm going to vote for it. And I'll tell you why before I start waving your arms about. If things don't improve, I'm going to give you a year, and if things don't improve in my ward, you won't be getting my vote next year. And the three that I get the biggest complaints about, sorry Adam, is obviously Adam's portfolio, neighbourhoods, enforcement. I'm not, is that one of yours as well? So 2 for Adam. And highways, sorry, Councillor Quartermain. If they don't improve in my area, you will not get my vote next year. But I don't want to be totally Westminster political about this, but I've looked at all the increases that are going on, and I've read quite a lot of reports, and everybody knows I had a pub, I don't anymore,
where I've made my money out of the licence trade, and something that should worry every single one of us in this place, that if all these increases come on, including ours, there'll be 9,000 pubs shut down next year. So we all should be worried about that as well, because where we'll be crying into our beer. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McHugh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors. Right across our Tees Valley area, too many children live in poverty. In Middlesbrough, it's nearly 50%. The poverty is of two kinds. Relative poverty, where regional economic parameters are taken into account, and absolute poverty, where children live without basic necessities for living, including beds, clothes, heat, and food. Destitution has literally returned. Their parents and carers voted for us to provide balanced financial stability for the future of our children. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Final speaker, Councillor Richardson, please.
I've got it. No, it's on. It's on. I've sat and listened, and I don't like the sound of my own voice, and I don't speak to hear myself. I very rarely get up to say something unless it's important. But I've taken all the legitimate criticism seriously. I've sat and made notes on things we can improve on, and I believe no one's made more efforts than Councillor Massey in the past, and officers to be as inclusive as possible and promote cross-party working on this budget. But there's two criticisms I think we should address. Procurement. We have to adhere to public procurement regulations. We can't hire somebody down the road like private businesses can. It's red tape, it stops us getting the best deals at times, and it's unfair. But small contractors rarely have the resources or insurance levels to enter into public tenders or constantly keep up with preferred tender lists, and it's not wrong. It's wrong, okay, it's wrong. Procurement's wrong. And to sit and listen to the attack on children's services is just absolutely hypocritical. You know, I don't usually attack other political parties. I try and stay out of it. But as we sit here, a letter comes in begging for support for bathroom flooring in our social housing, where 15% of families live without flooring. Who were they let buy down? Whose government increased those poverty levels? Who kneecapped our local social housing providers by pinning the housing benefit at rates that were unaffordable? Who introduced the bedroom tax? Who brought in universal credit and the two-child limit? So, come on, we have to be a little bit realistic, but to hear that it's our fault that there's that many children in care and not yours is laughable.
Thank you. Councillor Massey to sum up in 5 minutes.
I'll do my best.
I not to talk too fast.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for the comments, they're really appreciated. I'll try and go through them in order, but I'll also mention people who said similar points. So Councillor Kerr and then later Councillor Salvin talked about the difficult position, but we're also critical of the council for putting up council tax, also critical for the overspends that exist in children's services. My response to that would be 93% of councils in this country are putting up council tax by the maximum, 29 councils in this country are putting council tax up by more than the maximum, and 81% of councils are overspending in children's services. This is not a Redcar and Cleveland only issue, it's a national issue, as other members have said, but what we have in front of us today is a local budget for local solutions. Councillor Hart mentioned value for money. Mazars reported, I think, a week or two ago that the council has value for money with no significant weaknesses in its accounts. Councillor Hanaway mentioned the council tax, also the running of the council, but then asked questions specifically about the revenue support grant and the government. So in terms of the revenue support grant, you are correct that the revenue support grant is what it is. It's got effectively an inflationary increase over the medium term. But I can say that the recent government has started changing the funding mechanisms of local government. The financial settlement this year had 2.2 million extra for Redcar and Cleveland than previous. That has gone to mitigate some of the impact on our reserves. We're still obviously in a difficult position, but there has been some positive overtures already with that £2.2 million, and they've said, the government, that they will reallocate funding nationally beginning in 26-27. Councillor Pugh and Salvin mentioned obviously about the charges that exist within Flats Lane and the parking, which, as was addressed by the Managing Director, was a previous decision in December but forms part of the £800,000 roughly in the budget. I certainly think on Councillor Salvin's later points that at the very least a compromise could be reached around volunteers, the parkroom, but I think that's a conversation that's still ongoing with Councillor Quatermain, but I'd be happy to support with that as an avid park runner myself. Councillor Kay mentions a lot about the national government, but I can't defend nor praise the national government in this position. I'm here to represent Redcar and Cleveland at this point. Councillor Smith and Councillor Brooke helpfully mentioned the duty to set a budget and also potentially the loss of revenue that could happen if we don't set a budget today. So effectively, for all the members who mentioned those kind of points, Councillor Earl was one who asked a specific question later on. I think what we need to ask ourselves as a council is, what do we want to do if this budget doesn't go through effectively? Do we come back here next week and do we say, let's take 1% off the council tax and hope it goes through? Do we go to government cap in hand and say to government, actually, we need more money in terms of council tax? They're only going to say to us, if you're short of money, put the council tax up more. And this isn't a Labour problem, it's not a Conservative one, a Liberal one. Bradford, Labour-run council tax this year goes up 9.9%. We've also got Hampshire Council, a Conservative council, who asked for the council tax to go up 15% this year. They also had a Lib Dem one, but I can't remember. I think it was Windsor. Windsor's going up 9%. So it's not a party political issue, it's a local government issue in the main. Councillor Hunt mentioned his council tax concern for his residents. I empathise with Barry completely. We all empathise with our residents. But I ask, as I mentioned last year, that members regard the Burkean principle when they talk about politics in the chamber. The idea that we have all the information and we make decisions based on the suite of information we have. Residents don't have all information, and that's fine, and that's understandable. They're not getting paid to be here or having an allowance to be here. But taking everything that's said, don't just throw this out for council tax when we know, as I've already said, 93% of local authorities are putting up the council tax by the maximum this year. Councillors Quatermain, Southers, Earl and Brooke all mentioned the positives in their cabinet portfolios through this budget, defending the neighbourhood budget. Councillor Brooke, the extra nearly £2 million going in highways in the budget. Councillor Quatermain, Councillor Southers, the extra money that's going in £4 million for children's services. Councillor Robson, who I missed out, the extra money £3.6 million that's going into adult services this year, and they're right to point those amounts out. Councillor Joy is definitely correct. The council is not a business. She also asked a specific question about Tees Works. I think the important thing to say here, and it also aligns with Councillor Clark's point later on, is the council gets its estimates from Tees Valley Combined Authority, and this council chose to use in its budget the cautious estimate for Tees Works. Not the neutral one, not the optimistic one, not the very optimistic one, the cautious one. So the £27 million figure, 27.5, is the cautious estimate of what we should be receiving in the next 3 years. Councillor Nightingale mentioned a number of things, particularly around double-digit council tax rises, which I've already covered, and also mentioned the difficulties in local government that have been here for my entire time here, and I'm sure part before me as well, before I got on in 2011. Councillor Thompson mentions underperformance in certain areas, also the work kind of that continues, but also disappointingly won't support the budget despite some of the efforts that have gone into the task and finish group, the member conferences. And I think the one thing I would say is there is an opportunity to shape a budget. I know it's difficult to present an alternative one, but the most disappointing thing for me, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but Councillor Nightingale, at the last Resources Scrutiny Committee, when this budget went through, there wasn't a single question and we were home in half an hour. That's the time and the space for this debate, in my opinion, as well as today, so that it's not a last-minute thing that kind of holds someone's feet to the fire. Last page, sorry. Councillor Davies mentions the ramifications for not voting, links back to Councillor Earl's point. I did say this in the chamber last year, it's difficult to assess, but we estimated last year that it would cost additional staffing of £200,000 to not set the budget immediately. We also think we'd lose between 1% and 2% collection if we didn't set the budget immediately, because people would be behind on their bills that they get through the door. The cost of that is between 960 and nearly £2 million, depending on if it's 1 or 2% lost. So in essence, it could potentially, and Councillor Davies is right, it's a potential, not a reality, it could be more than £2 million, the cost of that. Councillor Martin mentioned about Christmas tree lighting, mentions about small issues which I think are very important, but I know you've already said you're going to be voting against this, but I would hope that members don't vote against the budget on very small issues. I hope that very small issues can continue to be worked on with cabinet members and with other people on the authority. We also mentioned procurement. A number of councillors mentioned procurement today. I think it's important. We did previously have a meeting where Andrew Nixon met with, I think it was a number of Conservative councillors who were very interested in that particular area. Councillor Thompson, I believe, Councillor Thompson at the back there, Councillor Thompson was the person who was very passionate about that and had some of those conversations. There's nothing to stop us having further conversations in that area. Councillor Robbins was correct. Scrutiny is definitely an avenue that we should use more so that we're not in this brinksmanship position in the last era. Councillor King asked a specific question about national insurance. The government has put funding into the final settlement. It announced £515 million this year extra for councils to mitigate some of the impact of national insurance. The council's share of that, I believe, covers, roughly speaking, 2/3 or thereabouts of the actual costs of that. So it's not the exact number that you gave, but there is a small cost to the local authority because of those decisions. Councillor Gray, I'm very pleased that somebody actually came here without a closed mind and decided to be, hopefully, swayed by the debate. I think that's something that we should all do, and potentially leave our rosettes at the door at times and listen to the way that we think the debate is going, as we would if we sat on planning. Councillor Richardson also mentions that we've had a lot of cross-party ideas today. We've had a lot of cross-party support in some ways today. They're conversations that need to continue. There shouldn't just be conversations that happen on budget day. We should continue to use members' conferences, task and finish groups to try and make sure that we have a budget for all 59 of us and for all of our residents. I move the budget. Thank you.
Well done. Thanks, Councillor Massey, and thank you everybody for input. I think it was a really, really good debate. Have you got your hand up there, Councillor Davies?
I did ask him about the what's it grant that I hope you've written it down because it's gone up clean on my head. But if you've got an answer to that, that'd be great.
Give me 1 second. Yes, I do. Sorry, I missed you, Councillor Davies. So, in essence, our share of that is about £300,000, but it's going to be felt in the financial year that we're still in, not next financial year. So it's not directly relevant for the budget. It's 302,000 if you want the exact figure. So, in essence, what that will do is it will show, hopefully, when we report a Q3 and Q4, that we will hopefully see the overspend that we have in the current financial year come down by the use of that funding. But thank you for the question, and sorry I missed you.
Thanks, everybody. I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone's input. I think it was really, really good debate. I'm going to hand over to the Managing Director, who will now take control of this vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said about 2 hours ago, I think there is a named vote, and what I'll be looking for is one of three answers: either a vote for, which is a approval of the budget, a vote against, or an abstention, abstain. I'll go through each of your names in order. If I miss you out, don't panic, I'm just winding you up as part of the process. But we'll start with Councillor Bendelow.
For.
Councillor Berry. Councillor Brooke. Councillor Brown. Councillor Corley. Councillor Cheney. Councillor Clark R. Councillor Clark B. Councillor Crane. Councillor Craven. Councillor Kerr. Councillor Cutler. Councillor Davies. Councillor Earl. Councillor Evans. Councillor Fairley. Councillor Gray. Councillor Hannaway. Councillor Hargreaves. Councillor Hart I. Councillor Hart J. Councillor Head. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Joy. Councillor Kay. Councillor King. Councillor Lyven. Councillor Martin. Councillor Massey. Councillor McHugh. Councillor McInnes, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Nightingale, Councillor O'Donoghue, Councillor Ovens, Councillor Pallister, Councillor Powley, Councillor Pugh, Councillor Quatermain, Councillor Richardson, Councillor Ryder, Councillor Robson, Councillor Wren, Councillor Salvin, Councillor Smith, Councillor Suthers, Councillor Simon, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Thompson J, Councillor Thompson P, Councillor White. Please bear with me, I'll just add some up.
Should play some music now.
Yeah.
Play some music. So, just got the results. So, all those in favour was 32, against 16, abstentions 3. So the budget is carried. Thank you, everybody. Right, moving on then. Councillor Massey again, I'm sorry about this. The pay policy statement, please. Councillor Massey to move.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move this report, but I also want to pay real thanks to the officers in the financial services, so around John, but also Phil and the entire team. It was remiss of me not to mention that on the last item. The pay policy statement, hopefully a bit less contentious than maybe a budget. So in effect, this policy comes to council every year and speaks about the remuneration of our senior staff, the remuneration of our lowest paid staff, and the relationship between the pay of senior staff and the remainder of the workforce. The key 3 things that come from this the report talks about uplifting the minimum wage that Redcar and Cleveland has, a separate minimum wage to the national one, from £12 to £12.60. It's not anticipated we'll actually use that because most of our staff are on a higher grade than that, but it's our policy in writing just in case we need it, in case staff are transferred in on different terms and conditions. The pay multiple it mentions is part 2. That's the second important thing, which is 4.87, and that is that relationship between the highest level of pay and the median level. And finally, the third thing the item reports on is the gender pay gap. It speaks about we have a positive gender pay gap at this authority where women's median hourly pay is 9% higher than the men's, and the mean hourly rate for women is 4% higher than the men's. It's not to say that people are paid unequally in any way. There are a higher number of men at the authority who work in manual jobs and a lot of women who work in professional services, and this is just the way the data puts out. It's a factual report. I move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Seconded. Are we okay to accept that as it is, or do we want to debate on it? Move it, yeah. Can we have a show of hands? All those in favour, please. That's carried. Thank you, everyone. Right, move on. It feels as if we should finish now, doesn't it? But we've got to move on, doesn't it? Move on to adults and Councillor Robson. 5 minutes comfort break. Yeah. Okay. Is everyone okay with a comfort break? Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay. Come back at 4:10 then. All right. Thank you. Right, everybody, can bring the meeting back to order, please. Thank you. Right, everybody, can we take our seats, please? Just like being at the cinema. Right, Councillor Robson to move a report, please. Councillor Robson to speak. Thank you.
I'd never know whether it's a blessing or a curse having adults report always on the same day as budget day, but yeah, this is our second year as cabinet member for adults, and it still feels a huge responsibility and an honour to be overseeing the work that goes in to support, enable and safeguard those with care and support needs within all our communities. An important part of that oversight is the work and feedback carried out by councillors across all parties who are working hard to speak up and advocate for residents within their wards. And I think we've seen that today, the passion that everyone is trying to do what's best for the people in their wards. I'd like to give a special thanks to all those members on the Adults, Wellbeing and Health Scrutiny and Improvements Committee, especially the Chair and Vice Chair, Councillor Mary Ovens and Councillor Steve Kay. The scrutiny of the committee has led to some important initiatives which I will reference later, and Councillor Ovens, I so agree with you. It's so important, the power and responsibility that scrutiny committees have. I think we should all be utilising those more. They really are an important thing. But my biggest thanks goes to all the unpaid carers and paid care workers across our borough. Without them, some of the most vulnerable within our communities would not have the quality of life they do. We are indebted to them, and we must continue to do more to recognise the contribution they make to our communities. We've all long known that there are severe challenges within our care sector, with a high number of vacancies and a high turnover of staff across the sector. A letter was sent to the Chancellor of the Exchequer in December last year on behalf of the independent care providers, highlighting the risk to sustainability of the UK's adult social care sector. The government responded to this letter in January, announcing measures to deliver a long-term sustainable future for the sector. These included additional funding and the establishment of an independent commission. In 2026, this commission will identify the critical issues facing the sector and set recommendations for reform and improvement over the medium term. In 2028, the commission will make longer-term recommendations and for the transformation of adult social care, which is long overdue. As Cabinet Lead, I will ensure that the voices of our cared for and carers are fed into the work of this independent commission, and I know that scrutiny will do the same. As a response to the challenge of shortage of paid care workers across the sector, we developed a local campaign to celebrate the sector and raise the profile of paid carers. It's called The Caring Kind, and it was launched in July last year. For those that don't know about it, it's a dedicated website and it's got easy access to job opportunities as well as a way to connect those working in the sector, as well as those that are employing people within the sector. In other authorities, local companies offer discounts to care workers in recognition of the valuable work they carry out, and this is something we'd like to link to this Caring Kind website. So I'd like to reach out to any fellow councillors in this chamber. If you work with or within local businesses and you want to be part of that scheme, could you get in contact with me? Because we're trying to make those offers to care workers just to give them that reward. So what the plan is anyone that can offer discounts, we want to link it to that website. So I'd welcome anyone to contact me if they wanted to be part of that scheme. Due to over a decade of cuts and increased demands, many councils across the country are struggling. We've heard that today. It's really hard meeting statutory obligations while still trying to remain creative, productive, and focused on prevention, and that could be a real challenge. But it's a challenge that officers and staff within Redcar and Cleveland are rising to, as reflected in the most recent ASCOF figures. These are national benchmarking figures that are carried out every year, and Redcar and Cleveland has scored above average on 11, the same on 1, and worse on 7. So despite the challenges, you know, we're doing okay. we could do better in some areas, but to be above average on 11 is brilliant. As one of our priorities within the council is supporting carers, and I know it's something that Scrutiny have been really looking at as well as their priorities, it's really pleasing that out of the 152 councils, we scored 6th highest on the percentage of carers who were satisfied with social services. One benchmark we're still struggling with is in relation to our residential care admissions. There's a real push nationally that we do more care and support at home, and different models of care, such as supported living or services such as the extra care housing, and there's one of those soon to be opening in Gisborough. So still more to do with that. Our figures are still higher than we would like. A big part of that is around the deprivation kind of figures that influences that, but we're doing all we can and we'll be doing more within our reablement and independence approach. Given the financial challenges we all know exist, it's imperative that all departments demonstrate that they are spending taxpayers' money effectively and efficiently, and we've spoke a lot about that today. And I'm pleased to say that our spending in adult social care is all benchmarked by the LGA, and we spend about 43% of council tax on adult social care, which is less than the 46% councils of comparative sizes spend. This is partially due to the successful enablement and independence approach adapted by services. Our comparative lower spend is also aided by the income we generate through NHS joint funding packages of care, and a lot of work is put in by officers to make sure that we get that joint funding. However, the number of care packages that qualify for joint funding just highlights the severe health inequalities and challenges in our population. Our teams of social workers and occupational therapists are essential in meeting the care and support needs within our borough. They work hard to provide good person-centred care with individuals with complex needs, with pressures to keep waiting lists down, and at times, as I mentioned earlier, with vacancies within their teams. This is why I was so thrilled to hear our social workers scored us as better than national average in all 8 standards that employers should provide to ensure safe and effective social care practice. I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all the social workers and occupational therapists who work in adult social care in our borough. They do amazing work. As mentioned earlier, unpaid carers are the backbones of our communities. The 2021 census identified that there were approximately 4.7 million people who were unpaid carers. That's 9% of the population. Carers UK actually estimate that as higher, to be around 10.6 million, because there's a lot of people that don't come forward because they don't actually identify themselves as carers. There are both health and well-being and financial impacts of being a carer. 60% of carers report having a disability or long-term health condition and could be isolated and under stress. 44% of working age adults who are caring for 35 hours or more a week are living in poverty. Carers allowance does offer some financial support, and carers may also be eligible for council tax reduction and other credits, including pension or universal credits, but it isn't enough. So I was thrilled to hear the government announced last year that the amount a carer can now earn before their carer's allowance is affected will be increased by £45 a week. It also announced an independent review of carers' allowance earnings and overpayments, and the findings and recommendations of this review is expected to be published in the summer. So I look forward to hearing that, because there's definitely more that needs to be done. Some of you may be aware that Health and Social Care Act 2022 introduced new duties to the Care Quality Commission to review, assess and report on councils' regulated adult social care functions. The online visit took place the week commencing the 4th of November, and I know some members were part of that visit. There were many positive comments, particularly regarding our dedicated and committed workforce, as well as some areas they identified that we needed to strengthen, including co-production and equality, diversity and inclusion. Since then, we've received a draft report. Procedure is that we as a council have a period to feedback any inaccuracies and provide evidence for these before a final report is agreed. Once this report is finalised, it will be shared. Partnership working is essential to meet the needs of our residents, and we continue to work together with our health and care partners across the South Tees. A great example of this is the integrated single point of access at Daisy Lane in North Ormsby, which I visited a few months ago. It's a brilliant example of work that can be done to move care from hospitals back into communities. And it was visited by our local MP and Secretary State for Health and Social Care on a recent visit, and again praised by them. There's also work going on alongside TUV, our mental health provider, the ICB and other neighbouring authorities to redesign hospital discharge pathways following an admission to Rosebery Park. This work intends to build on learning from the success of the acute discharge pathways and complements work that has already started in community mental health transformation. This year, we're doing more cross-directorate work across adults and children's. A priority this year is to review the transitions pathway from children's to adult services. I would particularly like to thank the hard work of those on the Joint Scrutiny Task and Finish group who have been looking at how we better support parents and carers of young people transitioning into adulthood. We have a newly refreshed market position statement that sets out a clear message to the market about the direction of travel that the Council intends to move and the types of services we wish to commission moving forward. We've had some investment in our commissioning team which will allow development of more innovative and preventative services. We're still on track to deliver a comprehensive voluntary, community, faith and social enterprise sector organisation infrastructure in spring this year. People are at the heart of adult social care, whether that be the individuals we support or the people that support them. But technology can assist us to do that better, and we have successfully introduced a variety of innovative solutions which are detailed towards the end of my report. And finally, Redcar and Cleveland is an amazing borough, and I'm proud of all our staff, commissioned care workers, volunteers and unpaid carers who provide the support to adults in our borough. Despite the national issues and challenges facing social care, their dedication and will to improve the lives of others is something I cannot overstate, and I'm immensely proud of. Thank you. Move this report.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. Got no... What have we got now? There was no one a minute ago, so we finished. Well, there's loads now. With that break, see? Everyone's refreshed now and wants to speak. Councillor Hannaway, please.
Me that probably over a year ago, a CEO of one of the care providers came to adult scrutiny, to be accountable, which is, I think, is very good because they don't have to come. And when I asked how the council could improve our partnership with them, they said if we could offer longer contracts, it would let them give greater security of employment to their staff. I asked about it more recently in scrutiny, and I think the AD said that it was something they were working on. So I just wanted to ask, has any conclusion been reached about that, and can we do it?
Councillor Robson, please.
I think we have talked about that. I don't think a decision's been made as yet, but it's definitely something we're considering. And I'll get back to you as soon as we have.
Thank you. Councillor Ovens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure we're all a bit emotionally shattered after that budget debate. So thank you, Councillor Robson, for a concise, informative report. As Chair of Scrutiny, we are supportive of the work of the Cabinet while still offering challenges where is needed. And we have significant members like Councillor Hannaway, Councillor Kane, Councillor Cawley, who we all call the Cabinet members to account. So I thank you for that. I'll move on quickly. We are indeed in challenging times, and I'd like to thank all unpaid carers and welcome the work that is being done to assist them. And you mentioned in particular the task and finish transition from children's to adult services, where it's been a good uniting of the family services and ourselves. I appreciate the challenges ahead. I think this is on 2.4, page 191, and regret that longer-term recommendations to transform adult social care will not be made until 2028. Seems a long way off, and successive governments have promised to grasp the nettle and do something, and they've failed miserably. Until we get this seamless transfer from hospital or NHS or any Medigate or wherever into a care home or home care, then we're going to be struggling. And we need some sort of parity between what goes on in the hospital with nursing and what goes on in the care homes and on home care, because people are there, working there, are responsible for meds, they're responsible for blood pressure, they're responsible for a lot of things that are done by a nurse in the hospital. And I look forward to a term that was used many, many years ago, and it was offering cradle to grave care for everybody, regardless of need or age or anything else. And I think we sometimes forget that we have some significantly young people who still need our care. We're not just always talking about older people like myself. I would also like to mention, I'm very pleased that we are listening to people, because there's been a little bit of a theme over the past few years, I think, to listen to people more, so that's very good. And the outcomes of that investigation have been good. So that's congratulations on the local performance. And again, thank you to all the staff involved. I'll just say that there are challenging times ahead, but I'm sure we look forward to the CQC reports and getting our teeth into that, and there will be much to scrutinise, and I'm sure those people who are like Councillor Corley and Councillor Hanaway and Councillor Kay, etc., and a few more actually, too many to mention, are a very active committee, and that we will hold to account and challenge where necessary, but be supportive where we think things are going well. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, I'm not sure there's a question there, but you might want to say some comments.
Thank you for those comments. On the parity between those that work in social care and NHS, absolutely. And I think the government are looking on that. There's a workforce kind of looking. There needs to be that recognition, and we've got. I said it in my report last year, and I'll say it again. You know, there's some amazingly skilled people that work in social care, and they don't get the recognition they deserve. So an evaluation and parity is long overdue. And yeah, I've been really pushing the co-production side. I think it was one of my priorities when I first came in. We don't listen to people enough with lived experience, or if we do, what often happens is we design the policy, we design the service, and then we ask people what they think about it. We need to turn that on its head and actually start with a blank slate and look at designing that together alongside those with lived experience. So that's something I'm really, really pushing for. Again, resources means we're not going as quickly as we would like within adult social care, but I think all the officers, everyone's on board with that kind of that push that I'm doing as cabinet member. It's the time to sort of do that. But yeah, that's well overdue as well. But thank you for your comments, and thank you for the scrutiny that goes on within that group. I think Councillor Earle would say the same. It's a really thorough group. We spend quite a few hours in that room, don't we? But that's what proper scrutiny should be about. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you for your report, and thank you and well done to all the carers out there. Just a quick question, basically to see what support you can lend myself and a local businessman. As the Armed Forces champion, a local businessman has reached out to me with unbelievable potential offer of a 48-bedroomed village to be created for homeless veterans who will need additional support when the facility is up and running. I've spent hours talking to this gentleman. He's got charities or getting charities on board and we've even got a meeting with the leader on Monday. So this facility will be absolutely overwhelming. If anyone wants to look at an idea of what a charity can do for homeless veterans in the North East, a good one to go on YouTube and look at is called Launchpad. These help veterans who are homeless or have disabilities to get them into jobs, to create activities for them, and to give them a place to live up to sort of 3 years, but then they also support them afterwards when they need to go back into the social housing side of things. So I suppose this businessman has reached out. It's a fantastic facility, like I've mentioned, 48 bedrooms. It could be up and running within months. Alec will hear more about it on Monday, so if you're available, if you can lend any support, or any other of your cabinet members can lend support, it'll be a massive addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, please.
I'd definitely be interested in being part of that conversation. It sounds like it's an area that crosses over a number of portfolios. Councillor Earl, I believe you've reached out to Councillor Brown as well, so we'll definitely get something in the diary to talk about that kind of further. I mean, you know, something addressing disabilities, jobs, independence, that's everything we should be doing to support and definitely our veterans. So yeah, we'll get something sorted. So you're saying that's Monday?
Thank you. Councillor Corley, please.
And thank you, Councillor Robson, for a report. And thank you, Councillor Ovens, for actually saying I'm good at scrutinising. I'd like to think that that's what I'm there to do, is to scrutinise not only my own administration, but for the better of the people I represent. For a long time, I've raised the issue of the transition, the drop off the cliff of the ocean that parents and carers feel from the age of 19 when they're leaving education to 25 when they then enter adult services. I've raised this not only in adult scrutiny, I've taken it to the Joint Health Tees Valley scrutiny when I've spoke to Truve and others. So within that meeting, sorry, Councillor Kerr. Did you say something? Within the meetings, Truve at the time did say that councils need to be looking at this in more depth. So we are the first one within the Joint Tees Valley that have set this task and finish group up, and we're ahead of the game. What I want is to make sure that we don't drop the ball, because just because it's not happening nationally doesn't mean that we should be dropping the ball. We should be setting the bar. When it comes to the inclusion and diversity as well, I'm glad that that's something that we're also looking at. It was my ambition back when I was in opposition to make us a more inclusive borough. I'm glad to see that we're still thriving to do that. Others may think just myself getting a few chessboards in our player parks, but it's all about making it inclusive, and I'd like to carry that on and work with yourself. But thank you, and again, our unpaid carers. Could I just ask, Councillor, how many of our unpaid carers do we know that are child carers looking after adults?
Councillor Robson, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more with that around the inclusivity and diversity. We need to. We're getting there, but with still more to do. often there's I think I mentioned it in my report. It's this kind of horrible term, the seldom heard, and it's not, you know, sorry, it's the hard to reach that we often say. It's the hard to reach people. Well, it isn't. It's seldom heard, but they want to be heard. We're just not going out there and communicating with people well enough. So that's definitely something we need to be addressing, because we're not addressing all parts of our community in the way that they need to be addressed and communicated with. On the numbers of, I'm not sure, I'll get those figures for you. I will definitely get those figures for you. Was there anything else question-wise? Sorry, I've had a long day. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, the task and finish, definitely. I'm really proud of that, because I think in the past we've kind of had adults doing their bit, children's doing theirs, and we're thinking about transitions but not jointly together. So I think the fact that task and finish group have got scrutiny members from across both directorates is kind of well overdue. And it's early days with that, but we definitely need to continue on with that, because certainly the consultation around the neurodiversity that was carried out last year, transitions was a huge, which would be no surprise to kind of you, but it was definitely an issue that needs to kind of be addressed. The other thing we're doing regarding transitions as well, within that task and finish, is think about what future needs are going to be for adults as well, but start planning for that a lot earlier on, so that we can start thinking about what we need to commission, you know, ahead of time, rather than just being reactive to things. So that's something else we need to continue.
Thank you. Councillor Nightingale, please.
Nitpicking, but I do want to compliment you on this very impressive report and the way it's been delivered, and I do recognise the difficult work that the people that you're involved with have to do, and it does illustrate. I wouldn't quite class myself as an ignoramus on this issue, but it's not quite my area of involvement. But I do know two things. One thing is that the report you've delivered today illustrates that this council is not a business. We are doing things that a business would not do. And secondly, that the bulk of our resources is going into this area along with children's services, and rightly so, to help people in need. So I'll come to my question. It is nitpicking, I do admit. But if you look at page 192, section 3.3, you'll find a whole list of information which is absolutely brilliantly presented. But it's done in ratios and percentages and figures. What, for near ignoramuses like me, it would be very useful if we actually had the number of people who are actually receiving these services, so that we can get a proper picture of what is actually happening in this area, which is an absolutely crucial area, and I hope you'll be able to, perhaps in the next report, provide more details of the dimension of the problems that this area is actually facing with the issues that you're trying to deal with.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, please.
Sorry, was that the number of people related to the... yeah, okay. I can see whether that's possible to get, yes. So that information there, we'll get it as far as number of individuals. Patrick's given me the thumbs up, so that is possible to do. The other thing we need to get better at, and I'm really conscious of that, is that sometimes a lot of the data we're collecting is around numbers, and I agree numbers needs to happen. One thing I'm pushing for more is more narrative and stories as well. I think we need to get much better at capturing the good work as well around sort of the narrative, because the two definitely needs to complement each other. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Earl, please.
2 in your report. It's absolutely wonderful to see delayed hospital discharges coming down from something like 60% to 20%, because you've now got a transfer of care hub. So I do know from past experience there was this continual frustration within hospitals that they could not get medically fit people out because social services had not sorted stuff out. So absolute credit to social services for what they've done here. 20%, do you think you can get it down any further?
Thank you. Councillor Robson.
I think we're aiming to. We can always do better. Absolutely. It's a great resource that we've got social care staff working into the hospitals alongside and just getting there, because often what was happening is that there wasn't the services ready for them to be discharged to, because there was just a bit of a disconnect. So having everybody kind of work together. The same with the Daisy Lane project as well. And a brilliant example of health and social care staff and mental health, TUVE staff as well. So yeah, fingers crossed. But yes, it's amazing figure that, because when it first started, it seemed quite ambitious, and it's one of those things that you think, will this make a difference? But it actually has. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Councillor Robson, for this very interesting and detailed report, obviously heartfelt. You make reference on several occasions to high level of deprivation and severe health inequalities, and obviously these are driving factors in providing the service level that we are now tasked with. Last year we appointed 8 healthy community coordinators whose task, if I understood it correctly, was to try to begin to address these particular factors that we regrettably suffer from in our community. It's not in your report, and I realise this question relates to something that is not in your report, but it would be helpful at some point if we could have an update as to how the healthy community coordinators' input into the relative and focus points that you have correctly raised in the context of your report.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, please.
The healthy community coordinators, that's part of Councillor Earl's portfolio, but obviously I'm very aware of them. There is an overlap between Councillor Earl's portfolio and mine. We have an obligation in adults to also look at prevention, but a lot of that falls into Councillor Earl's. So we'll make sure you get their update on that. One thing we do need to do better, and it kind of does relate to that, and again it's finding the time and resources to do that. There's a real push towards prevention, and as I say, a lot of that falls into Councillor Earl's kind of role, but we need to better evidence that preventative work is actually working and making a difference. So that's going to be a focus as well. We need to kind of get the examples, get the narrative, and I know we're both working on that and within our directorates as well. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, Councillor Taylor, Keith's a good guy in the building, so we'll make sure we'll support as much as we can. I wasn't going to speak until Councillor Ovens mentioned Cradle to Grave. I look at these adult reports every year with numbers not living with the real people behind the numbers. Can I just say, if it hadn't been for our commission services, Councillor Robson, that grave would definitely have come from my mum a couple of months before it has. The care she receives at home from our commission services is absolutely unbelievable. It's second to none from morning to night, and I want you to pass my best wishes on to the team. Councillor Earl has pinched my question, so I shall modify it somewhat. First of all, the difficult situation of the budget over the last year. How difficult as a cabinet member has it been to impressively come in on budget, working with the officers? And that is amongst the added pressure of I will go on record say what I think is a farcical and not fit for purpose CQC procedure, where they just come in after a decade and start roasting us. And I do thank Councillor Kerr, by the way, and other members that did work together and played a role in that. My question is, how difficult has it been coming on budget? And I'd like to thank you for coming in on budget and making some of these decisions in the budget that we passed earlier not as difficult as they were. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robson, please.
Be hard because you want to meet all your statutory rights, but then obligations, but as well as all of the preventative stuff, all the innovative stuff, the stuff that you know is going to make a bigger difference longer term. But sometimes staying on budget, and you're balancing that between giving more to the people kind of in need and providing these innovative preventative services, but recognising that actually, if you don't stay on budget, there's going to be even more pressure on taxpayers who again are members of our community, and kind of, you know, so it's that constant balancing act that you're trying to keep people safe, because we are, you know, the adults team are working with some of the most vulnerable, you know, those with learning disabilities, the elderly, mentally ill, you know, those that are at risk, safeguarding kind of risk, and that thing about keeping people safe and not throwing so much at it though that you're just risk adverse as well. So yeah, but it's credit to the team, and yeah, it's a constant challenge. But I'm proud of what we've done this year, despite all the challenges.
Thank you. Final speaker, Councillor Davies. The final word.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It will be very brief, don't worry. I just want to point up to my previous speech when we were talking about the budget, because I think everything that the council does is down to money, basically, you know, and the money that we've got in enables us to do what we do and how well we do it. But we live in a beautiful area, and more people move to Redcar and Cleveland to retire for their latter part of life. And that's not a problem, that's welcome. We like it when people move to Redcar because it shows that we live in a really good area, and that we like it when people talk up Redcar and Cleveland. Except when care needs need to be given, and this is where the disparity kicks in. More of our economically active young adults are leaving our area because they can find work elsewhere, they prefer to go somewhere different, which is absolutely fine again. But this all impacts on our ability for this council to provide care for our elderly residents, and to an extent our children in care too, to fund that care. We know this, we've talked about it over the years, but what is the long-term solution? That's the question. I think this is more of an overarching question, but again, I call on all groups, let's get together, stand together, work for the residents of our Redcar and Cleveland. I know that we are not alone, we've talked about it already today. There are councils up and down the country all saying the same thing. So let's write to the LGA leaders, let's write to the ministers, anyone that will listen. Let's lead the way on driving sustainability across all of local government. And I repeat, it makes sense because we cannot continue just hoping that things financially will improve. We must grasp the initiative, stop the deja vu, as Councillor King said, each year. I want you to do more, Cabinet Member, who I've forgotten your name, sorry. Provide more and give more to our residents for the latter part of their life they thoroughly deserve in Redcar and Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Robson to reply.
Yeah, I agree. We've got more than average of elderly people. We've got less working age people within our borough to care for our elderly population. We need to have more growth and opportunities. We need, you know, to all work together to build things in our borough. We all know it's brilliant, that's why we're kind of here, but we need to build those opportunities across all the different directorates to kind of grow and improve it. Not just for the people within my portfolio, but for everybody. But yeah, it is about working together. And yeah, I am working as hard as I can, and I will continue to do that. You have my guarantee on that.
Thank you, and thank you for the report and questions, Councillor Robson. Right, move on to number 10, consider motions. We've got no motions. Move on to number 11, to appoint members. The following change has been received and circulated. Can it be agreed? That's Councillor Fairley to replace Councillor Richardson on the River Tees Port Health Authority. Is that all right? Agreed? Thank you very much. We haven't got any questions, so that's it. Meeting finished. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I didn't even hear her.